What happens when a woman who built her brand on warmth, empathy, and morning sunshine sits across from a guest who seems determined to turn every question into a fight? On a special intimate Today show, Sit Down, Hoda Kotb expected tough topics, honest answers, maybe even a few tears. What she did not expect was to be talked down to, dismissed, and openly challenged on her own set by Meghan Markle. By the time the cameras stopped rolling, viewers would be arguing over one thing. Did a daytime legend finally meet the one guest she simply couldn't keep smiling for? The studio they had reserved for the special was designed to feel cozy, safe, almost like a friend's living room. Soft armchairs faced each other over a low, round table with a deep blue tray in the center, catching reflections from the warm overhead lights. Behind them, pale wood shelves held neatly arranged vases, framed line art, and a couple of plants trailing down like green waterfalls. Two slim podcast microphones hung between the chairs, angled to capture every breath. Hoda Kotb sat on the left, in a gray blazer over a white blouse, wide-legged patchwork denim draped over her crossed legs. She inhaled slowly, the way you do when you're about to step into cold water, and smiled at the camera. "Good evening, everybody," she began, voice smooth and familiar, the same voice that had greeted millions of viewers for years over coffee and cereal. "Tonight, we're doing something a little different. This is a special, in-depth conversation. No studio audience, no panel, just a one-on-one." Her eyes turned toward the woman sitting opposite her. "Joining me is Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, actress, mother, advocate, and someone whose story has sparked conversation all over the world." Meghan sat straight in her cream-colored armchair, wearing a black turtleneck and tailored ivory trousers, her dark hair falling in glossy waves over one shoulder. She didn't smile for the camera, she smirked, just slightly, just enough that it looked more like a challenge than a greeting. "Hi," she said with a little nod. "Thanks for organizing all of this." Hoda's smile widened. "We're glad you're here." The red tally light on the main camera glowed. They were live. "So," Hoda began, folding her hands gently on her knee, "you and Harry have been in the US for a few years now. How does it feel when you wake up in the morning in California, sun shining, kids running around, to know that your life is so different from what it was in London?" It was an open, almost soft question, the kind designed to let a guest breathe. Meghan, however, exhaled sharply through her nose, as if she'd just heard something mildly offensive. "How does it feel?" she repeated, her brows lifting. "That's a little reductive, isn't it?" Hoda blinked once. "Reductive how?" Meghan shifted in her seat, hands beginning to move as she spoke, her tone controlled but edged. "Well, it assumes that the most interesting thing about my life is geography," she said. "England, California, these are just labels on a map. I'm not a postcard, Hoda. I didn't move from one pretty picture to another. I transformed my life." She smiled, but it never warmed her eyes. "I think people obsess over how does it feel because it's easier than actually understanding why someone would walk away from a broken system." The corners of Hoda's smile faltered, barely. "I hear you," she said calmly. "But for a lot of people watching, they're just wondering about something human. You know, waking up in a quieter life, away from the palace press office, the royal schedule." Meghan cut in, her voice just a notch sharper. "You mean away from the scrutiny? Let's call it what it is." Hoda lifted a hand, palm open, inviting. "Okay, away from the scrutiny." Meghan nodded, as if she'd just awarded a point in a debate. "It feels," she said, leaning back, crossing one leg over the other, "like I finally get to be myself without having to ask permission or apologize for existing. I don't wake up and think, oh, I'm in California now. I wake up and think, thank God I'm not there anymore." People who romanticize the palace have no idea what it's like to be devoured from the inside out. The words hung in the air like smoke. Hoda watched her, the practiced host in her sorting through possible follow-ups. She chose careful ground. "When you say devoured from the inside out," Hoda asked, "do you mean the institution itself, or the press, or—" "Yes," Meghan said, cutting her off again. "All of it. It's all connected. And frankly, I'm a bit tired of dissecting it for people who have already decided what they want to believe." For the first time, Hoda's eyes flashed, only for a split second, but it was there. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and nodded slowly. "Still," she said gently, "you agreed to sit down with us tonight, so there are people out there who are going to hang on your words. You're not obligated, but you are choosing to share." Meghan's lips curved. "I'm sharing on my terms," she replied. "Not on the palaces, not on the tabloids, and certainly not on breakfast televisions." The phrase hung there, breakfast television. The tone made it sound like an insult. Hoda held her gaze. The cameras caught the slightest narrowing of her eyes before she softened again. "All right," she said, with a small laugh that almost covered the sting. "Let's talk about those terms." She adjusted the microphone slightly, buying herself a breath. "When you did that first big interview after stepping back from royal duties," Hoda continued, "you spoke about feeling unheard, unsupported, even at times unsafe. Looking back now, with some distance, is there anything you wish you'd said differently?" The question was reasonable, even generous, but Meghan's expression cooled. "You mean," she said slowly, "do I regret telling the truth?" Hoda shook her head. "No, that's not what I—" "Because that's what people really ask when they say, 'Do you wish you'd said it differently?'" Meghan pressed on, voice smooth but laced with disdain. "They're asking whether I would have been quieter, softer, more palatable, whether I'm sorry that people were uncomfortable." She tilted her head, eyes never leaving Hoda's. I'm not sorry. The room felt smaller, the walls of warm wood and soft shelves closing in a little. Hoda rested her elbows gently on the arms of her chair, leaning in just enough to show engagement, but not submission. I don't think anyone's asking you to be palatable, she said calmly. I think they're asking if you see any part of your story differently with time. Sometimes we all look back and think, I wish I'd framed that another way. Meghan gave a short, humorless laugh. That's the difference between you and me, Hoda, she said. You're trained to frame things. I'm done packaging my experience in a way that keeps everyone else comfortable. There it was again, a subtle jab, wrapped in a compliment-shaped sentence. For a half beat, Hoda didn't respond. The camera cut briefly to a wide shot, capturing both women, the microphones, the rounded chairs, the blue tray on the table between them, like a quiet referee. Somewhere behind the cameras, a producer shifted nervously. Hoda exhaled, slow and steady. Let's talk about Harry for a second, she said. Because a lot of people see the two of you as a team, making these decisions together. When you look at him now, outside of that royal framework, what are you proudest of in his journey? It was a generous pivot, a chance for warmth. Meghan's answer, however, came out like a subtle reprimand. Harry's not a project, she said. He's not a charity case that I rescued from some tragic narrative. I didn't say that, Hoda replied softly. No, Meghan conceded, but that's how many people frame it. Oh, look at Harry, finally free because of her. As if he didn't have agency. As if he didn't choose this life. Her gaze sharpened. He chose me, and he chose our family. And frankly, I think people underestimate him when they cling to the idea that he was somehow dragged into a better life. Hoda nodded. So what are you proudest of? Meghan hesitated, then shrugged lightly. That he walked away, she said. That he stopped living for people who only ever wanted to control him. That he stopped playing the mascot in someone else's institution. She paused, then added, You don't clap for someone for leaving an unhealthy relationship. You just support them, or you don't. Either way, they're gone. Hoda's fingers tightened around the arm of the chair. The smile on her face was still there, but thinner. A lot of people watching, she said carefully, still feel a real affection for the royal family, for the Queen's legacy, for example. Do you understand why some of them struggle when they hear you speak about the institution with such intensity? Meghan's eyes flashed. Intensity is what people call it when a woman refuses to shrink, she said. I'm not here to help them manage their nostalgia. The atmosphere shifted. The warmth of the set no longer felt cozy. It felt stifling. Hoda sensed it, the way only a veteran host could. The invisible line had been crossed, not by a dramatic outburst, but by a steady drip of contempt. She swallowed, then smiled again for the camera. All right, she said, her tone a touch firmer. We're just getting started. After the break, we're going to talk about motherhood, privacy, and what Meghan says people still don't understand about her life in America. Meghan sat back, crossing her arms loosely, expression unreadable. Good, she said softly, just loud enough for the microphones to catch. Maybe they'll finally listen. The red tally light blinked off. The producer called, We're clear. But the tension in the room didn't clear with it. This was only the first segment, and everyone, from the crew to Hoda herself, could feel it. The real storm hadn't even hit yet. When the cameras lit up again, Hoda Kotb was already smiling, her practiced television-bright smile, but anyone in the room could see it didn't quite reach her eyes. She shifted slightly in her white armchair, grounding herself before stepping back into the storm. Welcome back, she said warmly. We're here with Meghan Markle, having a very open conversation about life, change, and everything in between. The camera cut to Meghan. She wasn't smiling. She sat with one leg crossed over the other, arms draped casually at her sides, posture elegant. But her jaw was tight, her expression guarded and almost impatient. The black turtleneck, the perfectly pressed ivory trousers, everything looked controlled, except her tone. Hoda inhaled gently. Time to try again. Meghan, she began, before the break, you talked about stepping away from a system that felt harmful. I want to ask you something connected to that. She paused. Motherhood. Meghan blinked slowly, lifting her chin. What about it? Hoda softened her voice. How do you balance stepping into such a different life while raising two little ones who didn't ask for any of this? Public attention, public pressure. Meghan cut in immediately. Hoda, with respect, every parent is raising their children under pressure. Mine just happens to be televised. Hoda nodded, still patient. Of course, but many parents watching want to understand how you manage that, especially with the attention around your family. Meghan's lips tightened. I don't manage attention. Attention manages itself. People choose to obsess over us. Harry and I just live our lives. Hoda blinked once. Right. What I mean is, how do you protect your kids' sense of normalcy while... You think they don't have normalcy? Meghan demanded, voice rising just half a notch, enough to make a producer behind the camera sit up straighter. Hoda held up her hands gently. No. My children have a beautiful life, Meghan insisted. A private life. A grounded life. And frankly, I'm tired of this implication that because their father was born into something, they're somehow forever prisoners to it. That's not what I'm saying, Hoda tried, but Meghan was already pressing forward, hands gesturing sharply. People project so much onto them, onto us, and I refuse to engage in the narrative that my family owes the world something just because of bloodlines. Hoda opened her mouth, then shut it. This was going to be harder than she thought. She regrouped. All right, she said gently. Let's take it from another angle. A lot of viewers admire your advocacy work. They see you speaking out on mental health, on women's rights. But some also wonder, a breath. How do you differentiate between your public stance and your private life? Meghan didn't miss a beat. I don't, she said bluntly. I'm one person, not a brand. I don't owe the world two versions of myself. Hoda tilted her head. That sounds exhausting, Meghan smirked. It's not exhausting if you're authentic from the start. The jab lingered in the air. The message beneath it was unmistakable. Hoda stayed steady. Some critics? Ah, Meghan interrupted, leaning back with a dramatic exhale. Critics. We love critics now. I'm just quoting things people have said. Yes, critics always have something to say, Meghan continued, waving a dismissive hand. They want me to be quiet, to behave, to shrink, to disappear. She leaned forward, eyes locked on Hoda with almost theatrical precision. I will not disappear. The energy shifted again. Even the air felt heavier. Hoda crossed her hands calmly over her knee. Meghan, I think what people want is clarity, because sometimes your interviews over the years have sounded contradictory, and people struggle to understand how your story evolved. Meghan's eyes widened, sharp and offended. Contradictory? It's just what some have said, Hoda replied softly. No, Meghan said, her voice firm. What they're doing is picking apart my trauma for entertainment. And I'm supposed to stand here and justify how healing works, how growth works, how surviving something changes your perspective over time? Hoda felt that one, but she kept her tone. Gentle? I hear you, she said sincerely. I do. I just want to give you space to explain in your own words. Meghan scoffed. Space? Hoda, this is an interview. You're not giving me space. You're asking me to relive pain on command. Hoda's mouth tightened before she forced a smile. We don't have to go into anything you're uncomfortable with. Oh, I'm not uncomfortable, Meghan said, tilting her head, tone dripping with ice. I'm annoyed. A tense silence fell. Even the crew froze. Hoda took a breath. She'd handled heated guests before, politicians, CEOs, athletes after public scandals. But this felt different, because Meghan wasn't reacting to the questions. She was reacting to something else entirely, something internal, something simmering. Hoda chose her next words with the precision of a bomb technician. Let's talk about something lighter, she suggested, voice almost pleading. Your life in California, your home, your routines. What brings you joy these days? Meghan blinked as if the question offended her. What brings me joy? She repeated the words like they were foreign. Is that, seriously, the best we can do? Hoda's stomach dropped. What do you mean? She asked quietly. This isn't an audition for a lifestyle magazine, Meghan replied sharply. I'm not here to talk about smoothie bowls and morning routines. I wasn't implying... If you want a fluff interview, Meghan continued, then ask someone else to sit here. I don't do fluff. Hoda's breath caught. This time, she didn't hide the hurt. She sat back in her chair, slowly, folding her hands in her lap. The tiny shift said everything. Enough. But Meghan didn't stop. In fact, she continued coolly, if we're going to have a conversation, let's have one with substance. Not this surface-level curiosity you save for celebrity segments. Hoda exhaled shakily. That wasn't my intent, she said softly. Well, intent doesn't erase impact, Meghan replied. The line hit like a slap. Everyone in the room felt it. The camera stayed rolling, but the human moment, the real moment, was happening between breaths. Hoda looked across at Meghan, the exhaustion beginning to seep through the cracks of her professionalism. Meghan, she said gently, I'm trying to understand why everything I ask feels like an attack to you. Meghan tilted her head, unbothered. Maybe because I've learned that interviews are rarely what they claim to be. Hoda's eyes dimmed, hurt, but controlled. Well, she said softly, I'd like to believe this one is. Meghan didn't respond. She simply crossed her arms and stared forward, waiting for the next question like it was another battle she'd already planned to win. And Hoda realized, for the first time in her long career, she might be interviewing a guest who didn't actually want to be understood. The tension was no longer rising. It was rolling, thick and undeniable, toward a breaking point. And they still had 2 segments to go. The atmosphere in the studio had shifted, palpably, dangerously. Producers whispered frantically from behind the cameras. A lighting tech motioned to another crew member, mouthing, Is she serious right now? The room felt compressed, as if even the air didn't dare move too quickly. But the show had to continue. Hoda Kotb inhaled slowly, grounding herself against the tension pressing in from all sides. She adjusted the microphone clipped to her blouse, sat up straighter, and forced a warm, almost motherly expression back onto her face. Meghan, she said softly, I want to give you space to tell your story in your own way. So let me ask something open-ended. Meghan didn't blink. Go ahead. Hoda nodded gently. What do you feel the world misunderstands most about you? Meghan tilted her head back slightly, eyes narrowing in thought, or annoyance, it was hard to tell. When she finally answered, her voice was confident, almost rehearsed. People misunderstand everything about me, she said. My choices, my voice, my marriage, my motherhood, my purpose. She waved a hand dismissively. They create a version of me that's easier to criticize. Hoda nodded empathetically. That sounds painful. It's not painful, Meghan replied quickly, almost snapping. It's predictable. Her tone made Hoda flinch just slightly, but she kept her posture composed. All right, she continued, still gentle. let's talk about your marriage to Prince Harry. How would you say the two of you support each other through the pressure and scrutiny? Meghan's lips curled, but it wasn't a smile. It was almost a warning. People are obsessed with our marriage, she said. They treat us like characters in a show rather than human beings. And honestly, I'm tired of having to explain our reality to people who have no interest in understanding it. I understand that, Hoda said softly. But many of our viewers admire your relationship and are curious about how you two navigate. You keep saying curious, Meghan interrupted sharply. Curiosity isn't an excuse to pry. Hoda blinked. I didn't mean it as prying. You did, Meghan insisted. You just packaged it with a smile. A rustle of discomfort rippled through the crew. Hoda's face fell, only for a moment, but she caught herself quickly and straightened. Let's move on, she said gently, voice tight with control. Could you share what life in California has offered you? What feels different or freeing for you there? Meghan sighed dramatically. Hoda, California isn't a metaphor for healing or rebirth. It's just a place. We live there. The sun shines. Harry likes the outdoors. The kids laugh. I don't need to romanticize it for morning television. Hoda blinked again, trying to recalibrate. I wasn't asking for a romanticized version, just a personal one. Well, Meghan said coolly, I'm giving you the truth. If that's not compelling enough, that's not my problem. Hoda's expression tightened, still gracious, still calm, but the strain was visible now. Okay, she said slowly. Let me ask something from a different angle. Many people see you as a strong advocate for women. Is there a message you want young women watching today to take away from your journey? Meghan shifted, more irritated than reflective. I think women should stop trying so hard to please everyone, she said, especially in interviews where the questions are framed to box them in. Hoda's breath caught. The implication hung in the air. Meghan, she said softly, I'm not trying to box you in. I'm trying to have a meaningful conversation. Meghan folded her arms. And I'm trying to avoid cliché sound bites. Hoda exhaled slowly. I understand, but I think there's a middle ground. There usually isn't, Meghan replied sharply. Now the crew exchanged glances. There was no misunderstanding what was happening. Meghan wasn't resisting the questions. She was resisting the entire interview. Still, Hoda pushed onward, professionally, compassionately, maybe stubbornly. Let's talk about family, she continued, smiling softly. If you're comfortable. Meghan laughed, not with humor, but disbelief. You just won't let that go, will you? Hoda froze. What do you mean? You keep circling back to my family, Meghan said. It's transparent, and frankly boring. Hoda's cheeks pinked with embarrassment. I'm asking because people are invested in your story, Meghan. Well, Meghan retorted, maybe they shouldn't be. Silence. Not a quiet silence. A stunned, heat-filled, everyone holding their breath silence. Hoda's voice softened to a whisper. Meghan, why are you here today? That question landed like a stone dropped into water. Meghan blinked, clearly taken aback. What? I'm asking sincerely, Hoda said gently. Because it feels like you don't want to be here. Meghan's expression hardened instantly. Oh, I'm sorry, she said, voice dripping with cold sarcasm. I didn't realize I needed to perform gratitude for being invited into a room with beige furniture and polite questions. Hoda's face went still. Producers went pale. Someone whispered, Oh my God. But Hoda remained composed, quiet, steady, deeply hurt. All right, she said softly. Let's take one last question. Meghan leaned back, arms crossed tightly. Fine. Hoda's voice wavered slightly, but she forced strength into it. You've talked about feeling misunderstood, feeling silenced, feeling misrepresented. A pause. But Meghan, do you think, even a little, that some of that comes from moments like this? When people try to give you space, and instead of connecting, you push them away? Meghan's eyes hardened. She leaned forward just slightly, voice low and icy. No, Hoda. Moments like this are exactly why I protect myself. Hoda nodded, lips pressed tightly together. I see, she said quietly. And in that moment, the studio transformed, not into an interview set, but into a battlefield of composure versus confrontation. Hoda Kotb, America's warm morning show soul, was staring at a guest who had no interest in warmth at all. And Meghan Markle, rigid, defiant, unimpressed, had no idea how close she was to pushing Hoda beyond the breaking point. The explosion was coming, and when it arrived, it would not be quiet. The studio felt like it had slipped into a slow, suffocating spin. Every crew member frozen behind their cameras, every producer holding their headset in both hands as if bracing for impact. The air didn't just feel tense now, it felt dangerous. Meghan sat back in her chair, arms folded, chin raised, exuding an icy confidence that made everyone else instinctively shrink. Hoda Kotb, on the other hand, was holding herself together with sheer professionalism, a thin thread that was fraying with every passing second. But she still tried. She always tried. Hoda cleared her throat softly. Meghan, let's reset for a moment, she said calmly. I want us to finish this conversation in a way that... Meghan cut her off instantly. In a way that makes you comfortable, you mean? Hoda blinked. That's not what I'm saying. Of course it is, Meghan scoffed. Everything here is about making the interviewer look composed and gracious. Meanwhile, I'm expected to smile and swallow questions that are, frankly, beneath me. Hoda's lips parted in stunned silence. Tony DeCouple and Savannah Guthrie, watching from off camera, exchanged wide-eyed looks. Someone in the control room whispered, Is she serious? On morning television? Hoda inhaled slowly, steadying herself. Meghan, she said gently, I really am trying to have a respectful, human conversation with you, but you keep pushing back at everything I ask. Because your questions lack substance, Meghan snapped. You want vulnerability without risk, honesty without depth, a headline without accountability. Hoda felt that one, hard, but she didn't lash out. Not yet. Instead, she leaned forward, clasping her hands with careful patience. Okay, she said softly. Then, let me ask you something with depth, something meaningful. Meghan raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. Go ahead. Hoda's gaze held hers, steady, calm, and heartbreakingly sincere. Are you happy, Meghan? She asked quietly. Truly? The moment landed, winging like a thunderclap. Meghan's expression flickered, just for a second, something softer, something exposed, but it vanished instantly behind a wall of indignation. What kind of question is that? She demanded. Do you think I'm some broken woman sitting around waiting for validation? No, Hoda said gently. But I think sometimes people fight so hard to be understood. They forget to understand themselves. Meghan's eyes turned sharp, dangerous. You're projecting, she hissed. Hoda flinched. The crew collectively exhaled in disbelief. Hoda straightened in her chair, the warmth fading from her expression. Just slightly, but enough to electrify the room. Meghan, she said, voice steady but firm. This is not how we treat people on this show. Not guests, not viewers, not anyone. Oh, please, Meghan scoffed. Spare me the moral lesson. Hoda's breath caught. That was it. The moment the thread finally snapped. Hoda Kotb, America's sweetheart, everyone's patient morning show mom, set her shoulders back, exhaled through her nose, and spoke with a clarity that sliced straight through the room. You know what? She said quietly. No, we're not doing this anymore. Meghan blinked, hard. Excuse me? Hoda continued, her voice calm but resolute. I invited you here to share your voice, your story, your perspective. But instead, you've treated every question like an attack. You've dismissed the viewers, you've insulted the show, and you've spoken to me, she paused, with an unkindness I absolutely will not accept. Meghan looked stunned, but quickly masked it with anger. I'm setting boundaries, she snapped. You should respect that. Hoda shook her head softly. There's a difference between boundaries and hostility. Silence. Pure, stunned silence. Hoda then turned slightly toward the camera, something she rarely ever did mid-interview. Out of respect for our viewers, she said clearly, and out of respect for this platform, we're going to end the interview here. Meghan sat up straighter, eyes blazing. You're ending it? Hoda met her gaze without flinching. No, Meghan, I'm asking you to step out. The room exploded, not with sound, but with a collective shift of energy so powerful it felt physical. Meghan's jaw dropped. You're kicking me off your show? She demanded. Hoda didn't raise her voice, not once. Yes, she said softly. Because kindness matters, respect matters, and this isn't that. Meghan pushed back from her chair, visibly shaking with anger. This is unbelievable, she muttered, grabbing her bag. You know what? This interview was a mistake. Hoda didn't respond. She simply nodded once, dignified and heartbreakingly composed, as Meghan Markle stormed out of the Today Show studio, heels striking the floor in sharp, furious beats. The cameras cut instantly. The crew exhaled in shock. Hoda lowered her head for a moment. Just a moment, gathering herself. Then she looked up, eyes steady. To the audience watching at home, she offered 3 quiet words. We'll be back. Fade out. What do you think? Was Hoda right to end the interview, or did things go too far? If you enjoyed this dramatic breakdown, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next unbelievable moment we bring to life.